Some questions that I've received countless times across all the challenge and speedruns I've livestreamed or recorded on Souls games is, what is the best weapon? What are the best stats to level? And ultimately, what is the best build to use, dealing big damage on enemies? Of course, there is insanely powerful setups that you can use in any of the games when patient enough that will virtually one-shot almost everything across several of the Souls games. But what exactly is the quickest setup that you can make that will help you deal pretty big damage without needing to spend more than an hour? Well, to find this out, let's start the clock and go hunting for some of the items on a new character file for each game. One major rule is that we are not allowed to use offensive magic, as a lot of the magic builds tend to take more time anyways, and we're trying to keep all the details as simple as possible. While there is the ability to go into glass cannon mode and use the red tear stone items that require super low health in trade for a damage boost, I'm not going to reference them as part of this list because that type of risk isn't as fun on a casual playthrough anyways. Certainly go grab the clever Rat's Ring and the Morian Blade combo in Demon Souls, the red tear stone variants in Dark Souls, and the red feather talisman in Elden Ring if you want even more damage, but that's up to you. There's a good chance that if you've watched my runs in the past or caught other challenge and speedruns, you will recognize some of these items and routes to get them. Starting off with Demon Souls. The first weapon we're going to go after to become quickly powerful is none other than the Crescent Falchion. This weapon can be found on the cliff alongside the roly-poly skeleton staircase of Doom, and is guarded by the spookiest skeletons of them all. That's right, we're going to Shrine of Storms, the very first area of the 4th Archstone. Unfortunately for us, these skeletons are not going to play a trumpet tune unless you can count the sound of you dying very quickly as music. To be able to get this location in Demon Souls, there's quite a bit of introduction needed. Though you're not required to do the tutorial, completing Vanguard Demon can make the required Boletarian Palace Archstone a bit smoother, since you can acquire some free upgrade materials right before triggering the Dragon God's scripted death cutscene. Regardless of if you choose the tutorial or not, the Temple Knight starting class is a great choice due to the halberd's range and moveset. It also deals fairly decent damage in the beginning, as well as staggering enemies. Once through, you'll have the option to go to any following location. My recommendation is to buy more upgrades for the halberd from our friend at the beginning of Stonefang Tunnel. Combined with the Crystal Lizard drop just behind where you spawn, and the extras that you may have acquired in the Phalanx boss fight earlier. Getting the halberd to +5 early makes Stonefang Tunnel much more easy, and then you have access to unlock the lift down to the blacksmith before the previously visited merchant. You're going to acquire Moonshade Stones from Grave Robber Blige at the tunnel just after Adjudicator, which can be defeated very easily after a bit of spooky skeleton action. Then the remaining Moonshade Stone should be available after killing the Storm King with the Storm Ruler. Due to all the bosses being very easy in Shrine of Storms, and just the areas being tricky, the halberd +5 is going to be more than enough to get you through in combination with some soul remains to bait out the enemies. I have a guide on how to get through Demon Souls damage lists, so for any of you having trouble running these areas early on, refer to the guide playlist that'll pop up on the screen. Once you've cleared all the Shrine of Storms Archstone and unlocked the Blacksmith and Stonefang, you have the ability to get your Crescent Falchion to a pretty strong level, and most things in the game after this point will be much easier. I was able to do this in under an hour without taking damage, so I'm sure it can be done much quicker if enemies hitting you and fall damage is allowed. Combine this weapon with an armor set of your choice, and now you have a build that's decent enough to take on the whole game. Especially if you level your magic stat to scale the Falchion itself. Unlike Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 has a required tutorial, but it's much quicker, and the Asylum Demon boss fight is easier than the janky Vanguard. I recommend for this game that you start off as the Bandit class due to the great resistance of the Brigand set for poison, and the fact that you start off with the Battle Axe instead of having to buy it from Andre. This makes affording the proper amount of upgrade materials to max it out much easier. You also need to choose the Master Key as a starting gift if we're going to be extra speedy. Once you have escaped the Undead Asylum and have made it to Firelink Shrine, you have many options where you can go and weapons you can acquire, unlike the first area of Demon Souls locking you into one place. We will head down from Firelink Shrine into Valley of Drakes, avoiding the undead dragon by keeping a distance and only picking up the soul on the ground that's in the available pool of items. Next, we want to prepare to dodge the blue drake that blocks the path right after, whether it's the lightning attack or the bite attack. Keep to the right side and get into the lift up to Darkroot Basin and sit at the bonfire. You can then go backstab the Black Knight off the cliff for an easy starting bonus of souls. Sometimes this Black Knight will drop the Black Knight Halberd, which is regarded as one of the best easy to obtain weapons in the game. I'm not going to include it in this video for my pick of best quick build, because it doesn't drop every single time, and to even meet requirements, you end up wasting more time and more souls to use it. Not to mention it's very heavy, so light rolling with it is out of the question for a long time. After the Black Knight, we want to acquire the soul by the Hydra area, just before Havel's Tower, and then run back up to Andre. On the run up to Andre, there's a crystal lizard that sometimes will drop a Titanite chunk, and later on we can use that for our target weapon. If you don't have enough souls to buy full upgrades for the battle axe, you can farm the tree enemies outside the Titanite demon entrance before heading up the stairs, or after grabbing Andre's bonfire above him. Once the battle axe is upgraded, kill the gargoyles and ring the bell. Buy some homeward bones and then you can head straight to Blighttown through Firelink Shrine with the Undead Parish shortcut. When you make it to Blighttown, go right to Quelaag wearing the Brigand set to decrease poison buildup and kill her as well. If you're still having trouble making it through the water and getting poisoned with the Brigand set on, make sure you have some purple moss clumps that drop from the tree guys. The next step after ringing the second bell is to homeward bone back to Undead Parish Bonfire, facing Sen's Fortress, and get through there. One of the key details when you're in Blighttown is to not sit at a bonfire in general, because it's a lot harder to run backwards through Blighttown than it is just to warp back right away. And hey, honestly, if you die, it's pretty quick to get back down there. You can also use one of my guides at any point in this video once again if you want to reference how to run there quickly. Fast forward through Sen's Fortress, and just before Iron Golem, there's a giant that we want to kill for a Titanite chunk. Once you go up to his tower, you can use the doorway to block him and wait for the spam attack to end, making a huge recovery window and allowing you to kill him safely through the doorway. Alternatively, if you have extremely big balls, while dancing around his attempts to end your life, well, you can also do that too. Now that that's over, we're going to face off against Iron Golem with the +5 battle axe. This is not extremely easy, but if you count how many attacks you need and are frequent enough to stagger him in a good position, you can hit his ankles and knock him right off the roof. If you don't achieve this, just weave in and out of the area with his feet as shown on the video, and get damage in consistently until he falls over, which may have to happen a few times before he's dead with the current damage output. Now, with only 3 bosses dead, and less than an hour played on the game, you have access to Anor Londo, and more importantly, the Crystal Halberd. This weapon is not extremely durable, and can break eventually, but with every upgrade you invest into it, its durability should be reset. I'd recommend upgrading as much as possible right now, then later on save a couple of Titanite chunks just in case you get to the point where it's going to break. Since the Titanite chunks and slabs aren't very abundant without going into some of the side paths and killing extra enemies, the natural path of finding them should allow you to space out the upgrades enough to beat the whole game with just this, especially if you don't die a lot. If you do though, it will at least give you an advantage for one of the trickier bosses coming up in the game right after, which is Ornstein and Smo, as well as some fights following. My favorite part about this weapon is you are able to buff it with pine resin unlike the Black Knight weapons. So unless you want to farm the Silver Knight sword, which is an easily upgraded Twinkling Titanite weapon and buffable, there's not much else that can compete this early with this little bosses completed and time invested. As a bonus, if you're able to get the Crest of Artorias from Andre for 20,000 souls and get into the Forest Covenant, you can knock the ninja off the cliff behind the wall and get Darkwood Grain Ring for crazy flipping action. That should help you a lot in Anor Londo, but it's also your option to get it later if you want as well. Dark Souls 2 is up next, and quite a bit different of a time investment than the first couple games. I think a lot of you will be able to get this setup complete in about half the time, and though the weapon won't be fully upgraded till later, getting the Rapier +6 early is so strong that even without the use of bright bugs and resins, you should be much more comfortable than most setups when we look at how much damage you'll be dealing per second when attacking. To start this one off, we're going to choose the Swordsman, as it starts with the short sword, and it's also already upgraded to +1, making the first real boss fight a bit easier. I like to kill Moflin, the Majula merchant, right away to acquire his souls and armor set that boosts the amount of souls you receive from defeating enemies. This is not required, but it helps a ton in boosting your stats and the ability to buy things early in the game. We're going to grab the Titanite in the chest above him, then run over to Dragon Rider in Hyde's Tower of Flame. After bobbing and weaving your way through the old knights on the way over, you can enter the fog and do a trick where Dragon Rider takes a few footsteps forward, and as you run to the right side of him, he will fall off the platform in an attempt to stab you, ultimately plummeting to his death. You're going to want to be wearing the Saldora set that Mothlan dropped either shortly after you kill Dragon Rider or while you're killing him to get that bonus. After this, the NPC killing spree continues with us punching Lycia of Lindelt off the edge of the tower, as well as acquiring a bit more souls and her items. We're now going to run the route from Majula all the way to Cardinal Tower Bonfire through the Forest of Fallen Giants. Once we're there, we're going to grab the blacksmith key from the merchant and then head back to Lenegrast in Majula. Upon opening up his shop, I'd recommend grabbing the bow that's in his chest for easy long-distance enemy management early game, and also to grab 6 of his small Titanite shards to upgrade the rapier. Once the rapier is upgraded, we're going to head back to Cardinal Tower and then run the full loop of the area back to the shortcut door that's beside the ladder below the bonfire, then directly into killing Last Giant. With the rapier upgraded this much, it should be super easy and rarely even require you to roll, despite the adaptability stat making our rolls hot garbage in the early game. From here, we approach the Pursuer. Kill him with the Ballista trick, and then we're on to the final phase of getting a bulk amount of the weapon upgrades in just under 30 minutes or so. By the way, if you don't know how to kill Pursuer with the Ballista trick by yourself, again, you can check out my guide for Dark Souls 2, which I'll pop up on the screen right now. After defeating the Pursuer, we arrive at the Bastille, and there's some large Titanite shards to acquire, and the blacksmith to open up. Then we can buy the rest of what we need off of him and scale the rapier to +6, which at that point should require Titanite chunks to upgrade further. Even though we can eventually get +10, this is more than enough for a good amount of the required game, and combined with items like Bright Bugs and Pine Resin, which you can find pretty easily, this is a massive setup in a short amount of time. Next up on our list is Dark Souls 3. This game was the first Dark Souls game I remember running where people actually made fun of how much damage I was doing, and couldn't believe by the time that I reached Abyss Watchers that you could kill them so fast. The most ironic part about this run is that the character class you start with already has the most efficiently strong weapon in the game by default. By picking the Mercenary, that starts off with the Sellsword Twin Blades, the only goal from there is waking them up and getting them spec'd to do crazy damage. This requires a Sharp Gem, Dexterity points, and Titanite. Since we already start with this weapon and only need some Titanite and a single gem, I'm going to explain this by fast forwarding the video through some sections that you can acquire the Titanite from. After killing Gundyr and warping the character to High Wall of Lothric, you need to kill Vort of the Boreal Valley, which is made easier by using the Lightning Pine Resin in this window shortly after descending the High Wall. Then you will flash the Lothric banner to the demons and be transported to Undead Settlement. Within the settlement, there's some Titanite to grab, the Sharp Gem, and from there you're heading to the Road of Sacrifices, just after the Outrider Knight that guards the tower basement located beside the settlement. In the Road of Sacrifices, grab more Titanite, and a coal for Andre to smith with across the Crab River inside the wall dividing the forest and Farron Keep. Also on the way over, you can grab the Grasscrest Shield if you want a stamina bonus. Once acquired, we will head into Farron Keep, acquiring more of the Titanite shards, and lighting the fires to gain access to the Abyss Watchers along the way. Once the entrance to Abyss Watchers is open, you can go back and should be able to spec out a +4 Sharp Infused Sellsword Twin Blade. Defeat them, and then grab all the large Titanite within the catacombs on the way to Walnir. Kill Walnir, this should be super easy. And then run the route to Smoldering Lake underneath Walnir's bridge and grab a couple Titanite chunks. Then you should have +7 before facing Dancer of the Boreal Valley. You don't have to do Dancer at this point, but if you want to upgrade the Twin Blades even more, it helps to kill her and grab all the Titanite chunks in King's Garden and the area leading up to Dragonslayer armor. At this point, you'll be walking into Crystal Sage with a +9 set of Sellsword Twin Blades, which is one upgrade away from a maxed out weapon, only 50 minutes into the game with 5 bosses killed. One of which is just Gundyr, and Walnir being extremely easy, so I would say more like 3. Because the Sellsword Twin Blades can be buffed with Pine Resin and Magic, and you already have them almost maxed out, this setup would be good enough to not only beat the game, but to dominate the DLC, especially with enough stat investments into dexterity to scale the damage astronomically. Some bonus things to mention after this point in the game would be as soon as you go to Cathedral of the Deep following Crystal Sage, grab the Lloyd Sword Ring so you can get a 10% damage bonus to your attack, especially if you don't want to use the Red Tearstone Ring for 20% like we talked about at the beginning of the video, as well as the Flynn's Ring, which you can get back in Undead Settlement if you go to the area outside the tower where Sigurd is fighting the Fire Demon. One similarity in this video that the next game, Bloodborne, and the previously mentioned Dark Souls 3 share is that Bloodborne also gives you the most efficient weapon to do big damage right away. I recommend starting off with the Military Veteran class to have some good stats across the board. And then after escaping the introduction and either returning to the Hunter's Dream via the Central Yharnam Lamp or being killed by the wolf in the beginning, your first choice for the weapon should be none other than the glorious Saw Cleaver. This thing doesn't just have decent scaling and speed, but also grants a serrated damage bonus against beast-type enemies, which is what a lot of the enemies in this game are in the first place. The transform attack extends its range a ton, making its compact form distance less of a problem, and on landing a transform attack, you get very good limb stagger capability. Because Bloodborne's boss fights sometimes can be done in a very calculated combo, having damage and the limb stagger at this level will change your ability to kill a boss, making it a completely different game compared to if we were just using a different weapon altogether. The blood shards outlined along the way to Father Gascoigne are going to be grabbed in these locations. And then your next biggest hurdle, as always, will be killing Gascoigne. You can cheese him through the staircase exclusively with this method that I like to use in a lot of my runs. But no matter how you succeed, the next thing we want is the red brooch that's on the body nearby in his arena. This is going to help boost damage for now. Following this, we're going to open up Cathedral Ward and acquire some more blood shards from the alternate path that goes down the stairs from the main gate. After grabbing those, we'll travel to the Bloodstarved Beast, located in Old Yharnam, down the stairs from the courtyard outside. Once you've grabbed everything outlined here along the way, we want to use pungent blood cocktails to kill the Bloodstarved Beast, in combination with a beast pellet and fire paper. The method will be shown in my guide, as well as several runs I've completed if you have any troubles with Bloodstarved Beast. Following BSB, we're going to go to Amelia with a +4 Saw Cleaver, combo her to death, also using a beast pellet and fire paper, then it's on to Forbidden Woods. During this area, we will be grabbing quite a few twin shards, securing a nice +6 upgrade level, and some extra blood gems to increase the scaling of the weapon outside of stat leveling. The Saw Cleaver does better with a mix of strength and skill, which in Bloodborne is kind of like dexterity. By the time you make it to Shadows with a +6 Saw Cleaver, this with beast pellets and fire paper, or even bolt paper, is already such an insane combination that you really could beat the rest of the game like this, just with leveling. But since Bloodborne's bosses have a lot more health, and you're still relying on the beast pellet to pump up the damage more than even the fire paper or bolt paper, you should consider upgrading to +9. At least which can be achieved by the Wet Nurse area, if you're not doing DLC. Though Wet Nurse is the end of the required bosses, there only is 8 required bosses in Bloodborne, and there's still so much stuff after that it's definitely well worth it. For an average person playing the game, I do believe that you can get the +6 Saw Cleaver before Shadows in probably about a half an hour or so. As a quick break, for all my Sekiro fans, I would love to cover the game in a video like this, but sadly, it's not an action RPG game, and there are no builds that you can make similar to Souls games. I want to take this opportunity to ask you, if FromSoft's next game was purely action-based and had little to no RPG elements, would you be disappointed? Let me know why you would, if so, Or, if you would like that, what do you want to see them do differently than Sekiro? The final title to cover, and arguably the most flexible game on this list to become overpowered quickly, is none other than Elden Ring. I want to note that at the time of writing this video, I have not seen gameplay or played Shadow of the Erdtree DLC outside the trailers that have released, so I'm not exactly sure if it set a new standard for a quick and easy build in under an hour. If the DLC did change anything on this list, let me know in the comments, and I'll check them out after I've played it. In Elden Ring, the starting class we're going to go with is the Holy Grail, none other than the Samurai. If you don't pick the Samurai class, it's a proven fact that in your personal life, you won't be picked to play dodgeball in gym class ever again. And if you don't go to school, well, your colleagues won't throw you a pizza party on your birthday either. That kind of sucks. Don't be that guy. Make sure to pick Samurai and be a sane person that makes sensible decisions. After that, we're going to go with the Lands Between rune as a starting gift, just to get a bit of a boost early that we can use at Kale right away. After grabbing the smithing stone on the anvil beside Kale, and some extra stuff from his inventory, we're gonna run right to Melina and trigger the cutscene to get Torrent's Whistle. Set up the Grace at Stormhill Shack shortly after, acquire the Strength Knot Crystal tier, Golden Vow Ash of War from the Horseman, followed by the Third Church of Marika Grace. After that, we're gonna head to Caelid and grab the merchant at his shack by the cliff to get more things I like to use when acquiring Radagon's Sword Seal. Most essentially would be the Beast Torch, and the Dectus Medallion piece that's inside Fort Faroth. Now we're gonna go to the forest to get the Stamina Crystal tier, the optional Sunflowers, which I'll mention later, and the Axe Talisman under the Slumbering Rune Bear without waking him up, just like I'm doing here. Make sure it's nighttime. Once heading back up the stairs past the Rune Bear, I like to pick up the smithing stone just around the corner that's in the chest to make upgrading later on much easier. Continuing into Fort Height, I stop at the Grace nearby, warp to get some supplies from the Round Table, including a bow that we can use later to line up a quick kill for the first official boss on this route, and then grab the Dectus Medallion piece and get out of there. I like to pick up the Whetstone Knife in the chest under Stormvale Gate Grace, just to be able to spec Ashes of War on the fly, but this isn't required for the setup of this character. I'll grab the flail that's in the carriage behind where you acquire Torrent's Whistle from Melina, and continue south into the southern peninsula area, killing the Scarab just before the mini-bridge to acquire the Determination Ash of War. This will come in handy for a couple things. After reaching the peninsula, as I've outlined in the route, we're gonna grab a smithing stone in the bundle of items by the beasts, then grab more stuff from the merchant right after. Heading through Liurnia of the Lakes from Stormhill Shack Grace, our goal now is to grab some last-minute upgrade materials and items while also acquiring the weapon that we'll use for the run. But for now, we're hitting up the merchant for some more smithing stones at the Liurnia Grace near the water, and then grabbing the 2-finger heirloom talisman, followed by talking to Raya about her necklace. After that, we're gonna head to get the Dexterity Knot Crystal tier, hit up the Boil Prawn Shack Grace, and then spec the Physic Flask with both the Strength and Dex tiers to meet requirements for the flail that we grabbed inside the carriage earlier. Approach Boggart while he's sitting on the ground and hit him with a heavy attack to make him stand up. Then use the L2 or LT attack to lock him in the corner and bleed him out until he's dead. After that, voila, you've acquired one of the best weapons in a quick amount of time. Now that you have the Iron Balls, from the Prawn Shack Grace, there is an option to make it nighttime. Create some holy pots in your crafting inventory, and then kill the Deathbird on that nearby island with a method shown here, but it isn't necessary. If you do want to do this build as a glass cannon setup, the Red Feather Talisman is dropped from the Deathbird, so if you're feeling okay with having very low health in trade for more damage, then definitely do kill the Deathbird. Continue forward to give Raya her necklace and acquire the Volcano Manor invitation. From there, we want to warp to the Academy Gate Grace in Liurnia using the portal beside Raya's chapel. From there, we're going to grab some more upgrade materials, get the Glintstone key from over by the dragon, Head to the EG area through the warp gate shown in the route that's opposite from where the dragon is, and then head to the Dectus lift for the capital. Once you're in the capital, you can run all the way to the stairs with the double tree sentinels and then stop off at the Grace right through the door behind them. Run to the top of the hill that's to the right of the second staircase from the Grace and grab the golden seal, which we're going to use to cast the incantation Flame Grant Me Strength, which will be acquired in Caelid shortly. After that, we're going to make a break down the hill to the right of where the golden seal was, into the tunnel where we can get a bearing that we can turn in for more materials later. Warp back to the Grace outside the double tree sentinel and keep going up the staircase to Draconic Tree Sentinel. Once you've made it to Draconic Tree Sentinel, approach him such as shown on the screen, equip the iron balls in one hand and the bow in the other hand, and get some kukris ready. This method that I'm showing on screen is not super easy to do, and it did take me a long time to learn, so I'm going to write all the steps out in text on the screen and show them very carefully, and if it's still confusing or you have any other questions, just replay the same video part over and over and you'll learn it eventually. The best part about this method is dying is okay because you can always go back and do it again, and if you screw it up and he's chasing you around and the health bar appears on the screen with the music and all that, you can just warp out or run away from him. Also, again, because you're probably not going to be doing this without taking damage for the entire game, you're fine. It's kind of funny because this kill is very similar to the way that we killed Dragon Rider in DS2, but the devs decided to make us work a little bit harder this time. After you've gotten the crazy amount of runes early on from killing Draconic Tree Sentinel, we're going to go to Rotview Balcony and grab Flame Grant Me Strength, which is a great incantation to boost our strength. With the insane amount of runes you've gotten, you can go back and get the bell bearings turned in the round table to get the balls to +12 and acquire a dagger or short sword to spec Golden Vow. Equip Flame Grant Me Strength and buff the balls with Determination, and you are OP in under an hour. As a bonus, you can go pick up the Craigblade Ash of War from the Scarab outside the bridge to Redmane Castle. If you want to be stealthy for the whole game as well, take your +12 balls and take on Knight Bernal at Warmaster's Shack. Once killing him, go to Raya outside the Dectus lift on the capital side and let her take you to Volcano Manor. Join the Covenant by talking to Tanith, and you should be able to use Bernal's Bell Bearing in the Round Table shop to get Assassin's Gambit, which is an amazing Ash of War to rip through the early game areas quickly. For those that don't know, Assassin's Gambit makes you very, very stealthy, so use it and see what you can get away with. Whether you are new or old to the Souls games, I hope you all gained a little something from these methods of becoming strong in under 1 hour using melee weapons, some supporting items, and a little bit of speedy gameplay. If you guys want to see me make a video for the most OP build in each game with unlimited amount of time, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed for future videos, and I'll see you all soon.